That was actually a pretty quick pee.
Yeah, you know me. I'm just an expert at emptying my bladder really quick.
Cutting this from the book.
I'm not invited, Ollie. Fortunately.
Oh my god. Oh Jesus, there's a new notification.
Random American lady.
Wait, sorry, when did this start?
This is new.
It's new.
Wow.
Oh, that's awful. How do I turn it off?
The laughing, crying.
I can't turn it off. Okay, we're going for a thumbs up. There we go. Nice. Okay.
Okay.
Welcome. Oh, sorry. Immediate blooper.
Welcome everyone to OCHATO, the fortnightly podcast where we drink tea and review manga. I am Suellen.
I am Jade.
And I'm Oliver.
Every 2 weeks, we pick a manga that one of us has recommended, and we read up to a certain chapter and discuss the manga with a mega ton of spoilers. This week, we are reading Descending Stories by Haruko Kumota, up to Volume 4, recommended by me. But before we dive in, we must know the question.
Wrong!
Before we dive in, we must know the answer to the most important question. What is everyone drinking in their mugs?
I've got a chamomile and honey Twinings tea bag in my mug today, which has chamomile and honey in it.
Wow, who saw that coming?
And it tastes like chamomile and honey.
No, surely not.
Smells like chamomile and honey.
What's the ratio of chamomile and honey?
50% chamomile, 50% honey.
I've never heard somebody so undescriptive.
Otherwise, they would have called it 1/3 chamomile and 2/3 honey. Right?
Doesn't quite roll off the tongue, does it?
I mean, there's a reason why the writing on the tea packet has both of the words chamomile and honey like in equal font sizing. Because if it was like a third chamomile, then it would be like chamomile would be tiny, and they'd have to find a way to fit the honey around the chamomile, which is tiny, because like, you know, there'd be more honey in it. So, you know, they need to try and compensate, because otherwise people would be like, oh, you know, I want my money back. There's no trick.
I'll take your word for it. I've got the lemon and sugar pancake, or I think it's called limuga, which I believe one of you got me. It is delicious.
Beautiful. I'm having cherry pop cola.
That's not tea.
Yeah, that's from.
The cherry pop cola tea. Sorry, I thought you were just having cherry pop cola. I was like, traitor.
We're a team manga. Yeah, very nice. By Blood and Blend.
No. Blood
and Blend. Yes.
So, what are your ratios like in your teas? What's the lemon and sugar ratio, and what's the bird and blend? I mean, what's the cherry and cola ratio?
Let's test. There's something else in there. It is what's the thing that you put in tea when you don't want it to have caffeine? Rooibos. There we go. It's like 50% rooibos and then like a quarter the other two. It's quite nice.
Yeah, I think mine is like 70% cherry, 30% cola. It's very strong on the sourness. Yes. So, Descending Stories. What is it about? We start with our protagonist, Yotarou, who just came out of prison with nowhere to go, no family, no job prospects, but he has one dream, which is to become an apprentice under the very famous Rakugo artist, Yakumo Yuurakutei. And he did through a lot of begging. And what Rakugo is, before we go any further, is literally, the literal translation is fallen words, which is a form of Japanese verbal entertainment, where a lone storyteller sits on a raised platform and basically performs a one-man show. The stories are normally quite comedic, and it's a sort of in the modern days, it's almost like a very rare art that is almost dying, almost not quite. So we followed mainly our protagonist trying to learn how to do Rakugo, find his own Rakugo, his own style, and he also meets various characters, one of them being Konatsu, who's an adopted daughter of Yakumo. They have a very tense relationship because she's actually the daughter of another very famous Rakugo artist named Sukeroku, who passed away. So Yakumo, being Sukeroku's best friend, and also being his best friend, took her on, but she's interestingly enough accused him of killing her father, and then they had a big fight. They made up after the fight, and then Yakumo sort of launched into this whole origin stories of their relationship, or with Sukeroku, how they met, and how they sort of were young men and trying to learn Yakugo, and how they went separate ways, but then their paths converged again. And so half of I think I would say 70% of the chapters we read so far are still in the past, following the story of Yakumo and Sukeroku, with Yotarou being an ex-protagonist now. So that's sort of a summary of what we've read. We'll probably dive more deeper in the plot later. So quick question, what are people's first impressions of this manga?
I thought the way it started was quite interesting, because we have this guy who's come out from prison. You know, you don't really get his backstory immediately. You only see what's in the present, and I thought that was pretty cool, that that there was only a brief amount of setup for this story, and that, you know, straight away he's like, please let me be with this guy, you know, who's a Rakugo, like a legendary Rakugo person. So I thought it was, you know, it was quite distinctive, the start, and I think it had a strong start, but then I got a bit confused about what was going on, I think. And I think I got a bit overwhelmed with, like, I think this is just me, like, because, you know, I, being someone who was quite new to this world of Rakugo, you know, I had to like read a lot about it, and really interesting stuff. But also because it was like a lot of information, I eventually got used to it, but at first I was like, whoa, okay, let me just process all of this. But you know, as the stories developed, I began to get more interested in the characters as they appeared and as they interacted with each other.
Nice. For my part, I didn't think I was actually grabbed that much at the start, and then I put it down to like continue with my day earlier, and I was like, but what happens next? It turns out I was actually kind of hooked, so I ended up really enjoying it. It didn't have a particularly dramatic start, I don't think. You know, you compare it to something like literally any shonen, or you know, many of these, and they've got a fairly explosive start. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of like stuff being thrown around, be it, you know, feelings or words or power in some form or another. This didn't have that, and I quite liked that. It made it a bit different. And then I think that the story is carried, from what I can tell, kind of through these interpersonal relationships, and I think it does them really well. Everybody seemed very normal but different, which I really appreciate from a manga. So good the first impression was like, eh. And then the kind of first impression, once I'd put the manga down, I was like, oh, you know what? No, I really like this. I need to find out what happens next. So yeah, good.
Yeah, I think I have sort of similar experience where at the beginning I was like, where's this going? Because I thought there would be more sort of on Yotarou and sort of his side of the story, trying to, I guess, grovel and beg the legendary Rakugo artist, to take him under his wing, because he's seemed like the type of guy who needs to be impressed. I thought it's going to be a whole shonen thing, like he's going to like blow the audience away, and then Yakumo was like, oh, this is someone I could take under my wing, a wing under my wings, something dramatic like that. But it all happened quite quickly when he's like, all right, I guess I see something in you, and then it just went off from there. But it picked up for me, I think, when we got deeper into Yakumo's past, when I'm more familiar with all the main characters. I think that's when sort of when I start caring what's happened to them and their motivations. So it's quite a slow start, a bit odd pacing at the beginning, in my opinion. But overall, it's good.
It's good to hear. I'm curious actually as to where they'll go with that, because Yotarou, who's the kind of reformed street tough, as I'm reading from the manga here, I'm curious as to how much more his past is going to come and haunt him, and whether he'll be able to, I guess, turn that into his own style of Rakugo. I reckon so, but I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, we saw like a sneak peek, but that was just the beginning. The manga only has 10 volumes.
Wow.
Yeah,
and we've read 4?
Yeah, so we're close to half, so.
Nice. Did you have a favorite character?
I would like to say Konatsu.
So Konatsu is the daughter of Sukeroku. So Sukeroku is one of the kind of 2 apprentices in the past of Yakumo Yuurakutei the 7th. So he's one of the 2 apprentices. He has a daughter who's then being looked after by the other apprentice in the present time, which is confusing.
His good mate. Yeah. So the reason why I pick Konatsu is because, there's obviously some unanswered questions about her life and her dad that she wants to know the answers to. And I feel like the way that she kind of processes her emotions is very... you kind of expect it a bit, because you don't really know a lot about your dad's past, or like what happened, because you might not have been there when he passed away. So I think her reactions to things, and also like she's quite funny as well, the way she interacts with is it Yotarou? Yeah, the way she interacts with Yotarou is quite funny, I think, because like he's such a puppy.
He is, yeah.
Like constantly, I don't know, thwacking him on the head, like, you imbecile, that kind of thing. So whenever she pops up, it's a real joy to read, I think. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think I don't really have like favorite characters. I'm intrigued by all of them and I want to sort of see more, but I guess if I have to pick one, it would be Konatsu, because she's like you said, very raw with her emotions, and as a child she was very independent, trying going out making money, being a Rakugo artist performer, and tidying in the house with dad who's just lazing about and soaking. she as a child, it's quite entertaining to watch her sort of I guess have, what is it, almost antagonizing the present time Yakumo. It's quite funny to see their relationship in the past, but yeah, I think all of them are quite well developed over time. You really kind of see why they do what they do and say what they say. I think that was the most sort of interesting about this manga. It's all about character development.
I certainly agree. Speaking of character development, I've been really enjoying reading Kikuhiko / Yakumo Yuurakutei the Eighth's story. So he's. Do we know are both of those his stage names? I feel like one's a title and one's a stage name, right?
No, so in this manga, I think all of their names are stage names.
Yeah.
Technically, Yakumo, it's a rank one, but there can only be one, right?
Yeah.
So
that's why he's the 8th, right?
Yeah. And even like Yotarou, I think the only person with their real names are the female characters,
like Konatsu.
Yeah, and the geisha.
Yes, yeah. But I've really been enjoying I'm going to call him Kikuhiko from now on, because that's the one that I kind of remember him by. It's really interesting for me seeing him bounce off of Sukeroku, and they're kind of like, the ice and fire, or the classic. They contrast one another really nicely. And I like seeing how, despite being kind of, I guess, cool as a cucumber, he still does have these emotions, and those, because he shows them less when he does show them, it means a lot more, I think. So I really like that, and it's also fun kind of contrasting him to the later him as we know him. So him in the present, I guess, to see, I guess, how he got there. So I think he's my favorite at the moment.
Yeah, he's gone through a lot.
He has. He's aged well as well. Damn. If I have hair like that when I'm 65, I'll be very happy.
Amazing.
We'll come back to this when you're 65 years old.
Reviewing manga in 2060 something.
Yeah.
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 It'll be well.
There's a lot of interesting themes in this manga.
Any that particularly take your attention?
Yeah, like the one about modernizations and either keeping to the traditional or modernizing your art. There's the both Kiki, I'm gonna call him Kiki, and Sukeroku, and they're basically embodiment of there's two things, right? One wants to Sukeroku wants to change his Rakugo depending, on the audience, because that's the only way your sort of performance will thrive in this new world, because world's constantly changing, developing, people's tastes, humors differ. However, Kikuhiko wants to stick with the traditional path. Although, would you say that's his dream, or that's the only thing he can do?
It's a tough one. I would also just like to butt in and say I'm looking at the start of volume 4, and they've got a list of characters with their names, which I'm finding immensely helpful to keep track of who's who.
Yeah, I have in front of me. I just keep forgetting how to pronounce them, and they have the new names, right? The new stage name, Yuurakutei or Yakumo. So I don't have.
I see. But in answer to your question of, do I think that's what he wants? I think that his style is to try and, I guess, get it as clinically good as possible and treat that as a measure of success, and then hoping, I would assume, that success will follow with the audience, which is of course the opposite way to how Sukeroku is doing it, where he's like, I'm going to make the audience laugh first, and then by doing that, that's therefore successful. So that's definitely the most interesting thing for me, is seeing the two ways they go about it, and how all the old masters are like, this is the way to do it. This is Rakugo. But then they were saying, I think in the manga, that it's also a dying art, and you're like, well, maybe this is why, because you're not willing to change at all.
Yeah, I feel like this speaks a lot about Japanese culture in general. I mean, obviously, this is really, I know I'm not expert on any sort of Japanese culture, but from what I heard from their, workplace and a lot of different areas, even like game companies or just workplace in general, you see the same pattern where they stick with the traditional ways, right? If this works, we're going to stick with it. I think one of the examples in gaming is like they just, like Nintendo companies, they banned anyone who streams their games. Essentially, you can't stream them. You get, I think, you have to remove them and stuff. Otherwise, they're threatened to sue and stuff. Which is kind of traditionally you would think, oh, you're like spoiling the game. Everyone, no one will buy it. But clearly now in the modern days, with Twitch and stuff, everyone. That's the way,
The future is now, old man.
Yeah, and people who want to play the game will play it, and people who watch it are the people who are not going to buy it in the first place. So, so I feel like this is just an example, but it seeps through other things. You kind of see it in this manga where people are unwilling to change their art because they're like, this is the way. We have this system of ranks. It has to be, you see it with the previous Yakumo, who was, when he's deciding who to pass his title onto, he's even, the reason why he got his title in the first place is because he's the son of Yakumo. Wait, no.
Yep, you are correct.
Okay, he was the son of the previous Yakumo.
Yeah, because him and another guy who was, in his words, more talented, essentially, were both apprentices, but he used essentially family connection to cheat the other guy out of it. Who has the other person come up at all?
Yeah, well, no, we haven't spoke to him, but we know it's Sukeroku, the previous Sukeroku, the one who
Oh yeah.
Oh right, yeah.
Of course it
passed
was.
away as well.
So where's the previous Sukeroku gone?
Died.
Yeah, he's dead.
That's why the current Sukeroku became homeless.
Okay. Wow, there's so
out.
much that's just talked about here.
Yeah.
That it's easy to miss some.
Oh yeah, definitely. I found it quite hard to follow their names because they keep changing them.
that really messed with me, I've got to say. I like what they're doing with it, and the whole title system that is clearly quite important and therefore should absolutely be part of it. As a reader, I found it a bit confusing. I'm fine with that because I don't think it's not the kind of thing it's like, this isn't a shonen. This is aimed at people that are able to keep track of that. And with a bit of effort, you can.
Yeah. And it's part of the culture, right? And the Rakugo system. So it's like they only would pass the legendary title Yakumo to those who stick with the traditional method of performing Rakugo. Which is not the way to things. And like you said, Ollie, that's why it's dying. And it seems like, right now in the story at the point where fine, I'll open the character page. I lost the car.
Yes.
Kikuhiku. That's why you see Kikuhiku is trying to make a difference because he felt that he doesn't deserve Yakumo, the title. So he's seeking out Sekeroku and asking him to come back with him and perform Rakugo again, show them, how talented he is, and it doesn't have to be the traditional way. But of course, we all know that it's a bad end,
No.
So that's what kind of drives the story at this point for me. We were teased of a death scene, It seemed very bloody.
I'm actually really liking the multiple timelines with the plot lines. I think it works really well because then you're trying to fit the puzzle pieces together. And I think that makes for a more compelling narrative when you've got two separate plot lines that link up, but you don't yet know how they link up properly. And I think that's sure, it adds another level of complexity to the story, but I think this is absolutely the kind of story that can do that and own it. I know the anime is also very well rated, and I'd imagine that was actually one of the things for me that I kind of regret is that they've got this, this fantastic art form, and there's a lot of like singing and music and voice acting, as it were, in this performance, and it doesn't really come across in a manga format. I mean, in the version we're reading, which is from the Humble Bundle, I think, they changed the font, which cool, it works, but it doesn't add much. Whereas I feel that if this was animated, which it is, you'd be able to enjoy that a lot more. Of course, it would then mean it's a lot harder to do as somebody producing this, but I think it would certainly add a lot.
Yeah, and the voice acting as well. Like, it is a one-man show where this performer plays multiple characters in the story.
Exactly.
And the way they speak about it is quite interesting. They talk about, it's really easy, I don't know, to make it too gloomy, and and then if you bring up the laughing point, they might not stick or something. Like, I love those, like, when they're dissecting the performance, like how to deliver it and stuff. It's so interesting.
I feel like that could be done really well. I think it is actually done in the manga during the performance, right? When they have this kind of dissection. And again, I think that would work really well in an anime. It's kind of like having something like Your Lie in April in a manga format. Like, it works and it will be very pretty, but it's not quite the same.
Is it about the music?
Well, yeah. I mean, the music adds a lot to it. And I think that's one of the things about manga in general. I'm going a bit more broad here than just the descending stories, but it's got its pros and cons, right? And you can get these absolutely gorgeous panels that would take a lot of time to animate, and a lot of budget. And you can get many more of these if you're doing manga. Case in point, literally anything from Berserk. But it is also very much a visual medium, which can be excellent. But for stories like this, I think it can work even better when it's got sound and voice and music. Music does a lot. I'm a sucker for good music.
There's also the theme of a woman not being good enough to do Rakugo. How do we feel about that, huh, Jade?
This is like the thing that you were saying about like traditions, right? Like, yeah, you can see that she's got a huge passion
and talent.
Yeah,
from a young age.
Yeah, exactly. And like that special connection with her dad as well. That yet she's still being told, you're a woman, you can't.
Near the start of her life, when Kikuhiko is coming to visit Sukeroku, and he sees Konatsu, I guess, performing in the bar, the cafe, whatever it was. And you could see people laughing, couldn't you? Around and nearby, I believe. I'll go and double check actually. But I believe we saw people really enjoying it, which is success, right? So clearly she's good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's so weird that Kikuhiku is the one who's saying that to her, because he's seen her throughout her life performing as a young child, and still continues to hold that belief. It's just so weird to me.
Oh yeah, there we go. Sorry, I did find the panel, and yeah, everybody's they're loving it in the area. So clearly she's really good. Yeah. There's people saying, doing great, beautiful, pretty good kid. Exactly.
Yeah. And that there's also a bit where when Kikuhiku was dating a geisha, I believe her name is
Miyokichi.
Yeah, Miyokichi. And when he's talking about Rakugo and stuff, and she's at first, I guess, asking questions about it, but then he's like, "Oh, you woman won't get Rakugo. Oh, that's it's not suited for you. Of course you won't get it. You're a woman." And it's like, bruh.
But indeed.
Yeah, and like the manga kind of sticks with that as well, I guess for the time periods, even like Miyokichi agrees with it, when she was talking with someone else, like, oh yeah, maybe I am a woman and I don't understand this Rakugo stuff, and then I'm like, girl, no, stop. Why? It's nothing to do with the fact you're a woman.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if that's not a major plot point later.
Oh please, Konatsu, it's your time to shine, come on.
I believe in you.
Yeah.
So Konatsu, clearly frustrated by the fact that she's getting dismissed out of being a woman, rightfully so. And we've seen this, as you were saying, the theme of tradition and how it's quite a traditional art, but also that tradition seems to be holding it back. Say Konatsu does become a Rakugo artist, what do you think she'll bring to the table that's kind of unique for her?
I like to think that she will have incorporated much of her dad's style, but also, maybe include a few twists on it here and there, maybe mess with the timings a bit, different words, keeping up with the times a bit more and incorporating more modern themes, maybe in like in a very traditional art. So that's what I hope will happen.
Yeah, I mean, they have commented on that her voice carries, right? Like she's got a powerful voice, so that would definitely be one of her strong points.
I imagine that were she a guy, they would have been like, yes, apprentice under me immediately, please.
Oh, yeah.
Given her talents. I think that if she had done it back when Kikuhiko, or when her father, alternatively, was the same age as her, she would have struggled. But I can also imagine that given that she's doing it in more modern times, they'd be a lot more accepting.
Yeah. And like, almost forgot that she also sort of had this mindset like, oh, I wish I was a man. Like, I too wish I was a man or something when she was speaking with Yakumo, which is really disheartening to see. I hope this is the direction that the manga is going, that, she'll be fine as a woman. Nothing wrong with that.
Do you think it parallels to female comedians in modern days?
Ooh, perhaps. Yeah, I feel like not very familiar with it, but I do see like a lot of, not just being comedian, just any sort of jobs and stuff now. There was a time, or currently maybe in some places, that you have to act like a man to be successful, regardless, what industry or job you are in. There's still that sort of mentality, you have to act a certain way, which are traditionally viewed as masculine, to be successful. You sort of see in media how they portray the strong, independent woman. They basically act like a man, quote unquote, where they're usually seen as, cold, ruthless, not mother material, quote unquote. But actually in real life, like, neither of those are like mutually exclusive, and they don't have to be, act like a man, quote unquote. Yeah, so I would imagine that probably there was a time in comedian, maybe they have to make the same sort of jokes. I know, because I'm not very familiar with the kind of jokes, but it seems like a lot of comedians now these days are like, oh, they don't want to be cancelled because they don't want to say anything too like risque or really out there, edgy.
I think there are a few different types of humor that are popular at different times, and it kind of slowly oscillates or rotates between them over time. And you'll see this in comedy. If you watch old comedy shows, the types of jokes that they're telling are different. And it depends a lot on the ages. And that might be part of it. I also find it kind of, I guess, a double standard that you have these male Rakugo performers who do, as part of their act, female voices. And that's fine and normal. And then, but the other way around is weird.
Yeah, that was the point, wasn't it? They're like, oh, you know, if you are a woman pretending to be man, it's like weird. Like someone said that.
I think
But
so.
Yeah.
When this is set after the war, is that World War II?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So we're talking like, you know, maybe 1945 onwards or so, because they have the war during some of it. So yeah, I can see why it would be quite sexist, I guess is the word. You know, it's more recently that we've had more of, I guess, a cultural. Again, I'm not even remotely an expert on this. Please please look at info from somebody that is. But I feel that it's more recently that we've had the kind of cultural feminism movement, which, you know, sorely overdue. And I'd like to see Konatsu kind of face that. And I guess she'd be to some extent spearheading it if it's set in like 1945 or so.
Because I think it's the same with actors, right? It used to be that even, you know, in plays and stuff, in Shakespeare plays, like only men are allowed to be actors. And if there's any a woman's part, it would be played by a man. It's like the same that's happening here. Of course, nowadays, actresses and actresses, actresses are well accepted. But apparently in the Rakugo world, that's not the case yet. So that they're quite behind. If this was set, I feel like this is set quite recent, like in the 2000s, right?
Oh yeah, that's a good point, actually.
I would think so.
Yes, yeah, because they had the war, which, okay, so let's call it 45?
Mm-hmm.
And then then they basically had a few years of kind of messing about, so let's call it 1950. Then, what, Konatsu was born then or later?
Later, after the war.
So maybe let's call it, what, 1960? I don't think it's the 70s at that point yet. It's tough to work out. Anyway, I'm excited to see kind of what she does and what she brings to the art.
Definitely. What do we think about the, not exactly love triangle, but this sort of the relationship between Miyokichi and Kikuhiku and Sukeroku? What do you think her deal is?
So wasn't the whole reason, you know, in the first place that they broke up was because he got told by people in the business that being with a woman is bad for your Rakugo art or something?
I think specifically it was being with her kind of woman, quote unquote.
Oh, right.
Not
Yeah.
serial woman, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, you know, I think I understand from all parties' point of views. It did feel like a difficult situation. But also, if I was Sukeroku, I would not have gone in for that hug.
I think the hug was fine. I think the kiss was not.
Yeah.
Am I thinking about the right hug here?
I just like, okay, a hug would have been fine if there hadn't been any sort of simmering feelings, I think.
No, I think back then, like, hugging was between man and woman, you know, leading up to something. I think, yeah, I don't know. Maybe
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd understand if, you know, she was obviously upset and he wanted to comfort her, but I just wonder if a hug was like the best way to do it, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw where it led to.
Yeah, it's that at the time they were already dating, right? It's not it was the first hug, right? We're talking about. The second hug, it was after the breakup. It was like, okay, well, now I guess it's free game. Before that, well, not really, because they're like friends, and it's like, bruh, it's someone's ex, and you're like, but I guess Kikuhiku, if he was, upset by this union, I mean, I think he was over it by then. He didn't show it, but at first, he only displayed aggression because he wanted to break up with her anyway. So it was sort of easier for her, easier to deal with, even though he loves her. But I guess Rakugo is the only thing he cares about in his life. And specifically, Sukeroku's Rakugo gives him life. I don't know if I'm reading too much into this, but I just feel like whenever they're talking about Rakugo together and like, oh, you're the only I'm just like, little homoerotic subtext. I thought it could be. I don't know. Why are you blushing so much, Kikuhiku? Huh? Why are you blushing so much?
I thought they would have been great together.
Yeah, I don't know.
I agree. It's kind of a sorry. Go on.
No, I'm just saying. Have you ever admired someone's like something so much, and you're like, oh my god, you're like only Jade, only your Rakugo, give me life. Like there's no one else but you. You're the only your Rakugo makes me smile.
What, mine and only mine?
Yeah,
only yours, Jade.
Only yours, only mine.
Who says that? Who does that?
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever say that to anyone or even think that. I mean, I don't know, did they have a lot of interests back then? Were they able to like,
Only Rakugo.
Rakugo. Like, yeah, it's this whole like almost like a confession. I'm like, just confess, like at this point.
I'm just reading through that scene now. It's kind of messy. Yeah, I think it's two people that are just sad, trying to kind of comfort each other, and then
yeah.
I do like the faces that they pull.
Speaking of faces,
Mm-hmm.
what do we think about the character designs?
Weirdly, I'm actually more impressed by the clothing designs than the character designs. So I think generally I quite like the artwork. Again, it's like I think I said this for one of the ones before. It's pretty clean. I think it's clear what's happening. I like the framing. I like what they do with the panels too. And I think the characters are generally pretty easy to tell apart, which is, if you swap the classic test, if you swap their clothes, could you tell them apart? Yes, I think. I also really like the clothes that they have going on. They've got a lot of like kimonos and things, all of which have these great patterns on, which I don't know. I just appreciate the work that goes into them. So I like it.
Yeah, I think the thing that I most admired about the art were the actual Rakugo performances. I actually really liked how they changed the font style for, when different parts came in, or, setting the scene and stuff like that, making sure we knew when someone was speaking, how loud they were speaking. That was pretty helpful. And it was nice that they didn't just focus on the performer whilst they were doing the Rakugo, and that there were, other people's reactions, things on the stage, dust in the air, whatever those specs were. It was really nice, and I liked the character design, as you were saying, Ollie, because I know that when we first saw Konatsu, she was in different clothing to a lot of the people. To like her I want to say her. Okay, the guy. Sorry, what's his name again?
Kikuhiko?
Kikuhiko. Yeah. like the clothes that he normally wears. Hers is like more laid back, like, I'm just chilling in this house,
Yeah.
I'll just tell off Yotarou whenever. So yeah, I liked it.
Yeah. At first I thought the characters are quite simple and there's sort of not much going on. But then I think maybe it was just Yotarou. Maybe it was just because he's a very he's a simple guy. Rakugo makes him happy. And then I think when it comes to Hikuhiko's story, you see a lot of more expression changes and a lot more dynamic facial expressions, whether he's performing Rakugo or just speaking with his friend Sukeroku.
Looking at it now, Yotarou has like significantly more simple design, it seems like,
Yeah.
than the others. It might just be the panel that they chose, but all of the others have like nice detailed hair and like more than one line for a chin,
He just has,
or at least shading on their chin.
yeah, just not a lot of shading. I think that's it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Not a lot of shading. Just the simple, the wink in the eye and the tongue out, and then,
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that the art was very playful.
Mm.
In what way?
So, as you were saying, like the wink of the eye, that kind of thing. I found that the brush strokes, the pen strokes, really reflected the playfulness of the manga at times. And I found that it reflected the more serious moments in like more serious brush. I don't really know how to describe it. It just felt that way to me. I felt like the way of drawing really changed.
It was certainly flexible. I agree. You get a lot of side characters that have kind of one emotion for the scene that they're in, and they'll have one face for that. Whereas your more complex characters get a bit more. Yeah, I think shading is really it.
I've got a pimple on my arm.
Thank you, Jade.
Sorry. Sorry, Sterling, what were you going to say?
What, me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I also noticed how I think it's quite interesting to see how Kikuhiko grows up, because you see him when he was younger and then he gradually gets older and grown up into where he is present day. I think it's not more noticeable for him than Sukeroku. I mean, it does happen for him as well. I guess I just didn't pay attention. So it's quite nice to see you can still see the resemblance at different ages. I feel like that's quite a difficult thing to do, right? To keep the character design consistent. And I just love Konatsu's as a child. She's so cute.
She is very cute.
Yeah.
So yeah, the artwork sort of grew on me as I read further into the story. At first, I was like, I found it quite simplistic, but actually it has a lot of depth as we read on. So yeah, I thought, Ollie, you're going to be like, OCHATO, nothing holds up to OCHATO. Only OCHATO way for me.
Well, we've read quite a few manga now, and so I think we're getting a lot that they're well drawn, and there's certainly scenes that are really nice, but some manga have particularly gorgeous scenes, which OCHATO, Berserk, two that come to mind immediately. And you get some of those scenes that are really spectacular. And I think this is more about the people in it and the heart rather than the environment, which lends itself to fewer, I guess, pretty scenery ones and more expressions.
Any final thoughts?
Yes, I would like to say that I would like to see Yotarou's backstory, a bit more of his life before prison as well, and how he got into prison. Like, how was he handcuffed? How was he brought in? How much time, how did he find his time?
What did he do?
And I also want to say that it's refreshing to have a teacher type person not be a perfect teacher, if you get what I mean. Like, they get frustrated and stuff when things go wrong or aren't up to their standards as well. So that was, you have teachers who are there to help you learn, but like the teachers in this manga are like, you're doing it wrong or something or like this is not up to my expectations, that kind of thing. So that was different, and I really liked it.
I agree. For me, I really like the, I guess, web of characters and the fact that everybody has their flaws, as you were saying. I'm certainly going to be reading some more, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
Perfect. Yeah, I want to see how Kikiko's story ends, even though we know the end result, but we'll want to see the journey getting there. Yeah, and it's only there's only 10 volumes, but I feel like the anime will be a good shout to do.
The anime is very well rated. I would recommend it. I haven't seen it myself, but I've heard very good things.
Can't wait. Okay,
I'm busy watching an isekai spider at the moment, which is
amazing.
entertaining but in a different way.
So we have a special segment in our podcast where we take the characters from the previous manga that we've read and we bring them into the current one and see how and we discuss how we think they will do in this manga.
So are we bringing Gintama in? Because he's worked beautifully in this, in my opinion.
The trio, I think, will be a good shout.
Yeah. I mean, Yotarou and Gintama, I'm seeing certainly some parallels in the kind of carefree attitude, but the focus when they need it. I'd really like to see Gintama trying to do a transition from samurai to Rakugo practitioner. And I think he'd do beautifully on the comedy front. How do you think the other two would fare?
Yeah, it's quite hard. Would they be Rakugo performers? I think they'll be the hecklers, honestly.
They just go to his early ones and just yell at him from the crowd.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, Kagura definitely. And Shinpachi maybe will be supportive at first. But yeah, maybe he'll be a fan of Konatsu or some other female performer and just become the leader.
He'd be her number one fan.
Yeah. Definitely, I could see that for him.
I'd love to see like a time lapse of her like performing, and at the first performance is him at the back with like a woo go Konatsu card, and then as like it time lapses and the crowd fills up and it gets more like fancy surrounding it, he's still there at the back in each one.
So cute. That's it.
Oh yeah, because like he was the one who led the idol.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, he'd work perfectly in this.
I think this is actually one of the best fits that we've had for bringing people in, because they're kind of a comedy trio among themselves, and a big part of Rakugo is that it's kind of a comedy. I think they're a bit less nuanced. They're a bit more just kind of funny. So maybe they'd be a bit more serious than normal. But I think we get this in the later bits of Gintama too that we haven't touched on, but do exist.
And maybe we'll see Yakumo potentially trying to teach the three as well how to do a good Rakugo, and just him having like so tired of dealing with like, I think maybe like Gintoki he'll be the least problematic, and Kagura, like he's like, nope, you're number one, she's probably disinterested anyway, number two, like she's a woman. Yeah, I just love to we'll see a montage of him trying to teach them and they're just not having it, not getting there, and just bringing chaos to this little was it Yose?
Yes, I'd love it.
Same.
So what are your final sort of not rating, but thoughts about this manga? Would you recommend it to anyone? Who would you recommend it to?
I'd recommend it to people who like stories within stories.
Flashbacks within flashbacks.
I know.
Yeah.
I think it's actually one of the more adult mangas that we've read. We've had ones like Berserk, Oyasumi Pan, maybe To Your Eternity to some extent,
Yeah, maybe Space Brothers. They touch up some themes.
Yeah, maybe.
I get what you mean.
But this is certainly the kind of one that if you're going in expecting action and a fast pace and whatnot, you're not going to get it. I actually found it to be a lot more like Nana in that it's really about people. And you need to give it enough time to learn who the people are and appreciate what the stakes are for them. And then it becomes really enjoyable. And for me, that was about halfway through volume 2, I think. But I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to keep reading it.
Yeah, for me as well. I'd like to find out how the characters will grow. And I think I would recommend it because it has such a interesting story, interesting characters. But I think I would probably recommend the anime more, even though I haven't watched it. I just feel like, with the good ratings from the public and the fact that you have everything acted out for you. So I feel like that would be a pretty good way to get into it. I'm not sure if everything's animated, but it's only 10 volumes, so probably the answer is yes. Perfect.
Nice.
So that concludes Descending Stories by Haruko Kumota.
The 3 podcasters said mysteriously.
What are we reading next, Ollie?
She asked on a moonlit night in May.
In May. Is it May? Yeah, it's still kind of...
Hey, yeah. I was trying to be a Rakugo performer, okay?
Amazing. Yeah, love that.
Decisively. Oliver. No, okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop that immediately. So we're reading Umineko When They Cry, or Umineko no Naku Koro ni, if you prefer, which is called When the Seagulls Cry. I don't know why they translated everything except seagull. There we go.
It's like translators know.
Yeah.
Umineko is seagull.
Yeah.
Just according to Keikaku.
Exactly. It was actually originally a visual novel produced in 2007, which I've been playing. It's great. But it was adapted into a manga, and this manga is what we're going to be reading. The manga's written by Kei Natsumi, and it began in January 2008, and then has I think it's gone through various other people, but basically the manga is good. It follows the same plot. There's a lot, so we will be reading up to chapter 22, which is the end. It coincides with the end of episode 1 of 8 in the visual novel, which is certainly quite a lot happens. I won't say much more because I have just about finished the novel myself, so I'm looking forward to kind of going back through it. It's it's definitely a mystery. It's sort of supernatural too, and it is low to mid key horror. I hope you enjoy it.
That sounds great.
Nice.
Thank you for listening to this episode of OCHATO.
We'll see you in the next one.